Should you learn Stata for data science in 2022? When I started my journey and discovered the joy of data analysis more than 20 years ago, shocking, Stata 8 was really cool. And this is more or less how it looked. In fact, that's Stata 9. Stata 8 looked very, very similar. Lovely green colors on a black background. It looks amazing. It still works, yeah, so we can just give it a little spin, click display command, and of course it has to be hello world. It always has to be. Here we go. If I can spell it properly. Amazing. Quite nice. Actually, back then I thought it was a big step up from eViews and SPSS, which I used before. It was just the start of my PhD program. It's 20 years ago. My gosh, getting really old. Now, the interesting question is, now 20 years later, of course things moved on. It looks a bit better. This actually is even now an old version. It's now version 17, but I stopped upgrading at 13 because I don't want to spend more money. But now in 2022, should you start spending your time and your money on learning Stata if you want to go into data science? So that's the interesting issue, isn't it? Now, first, one has to be honest, Stata is still used in many areas, including economics, finance, biostatistics. And many employers use Stata. That implies as well so that there is a significant demand. So I did some work for HMRC, for instance, and they use Stata quite a bit. Bank of England is using Stata, and also, of course, Python and R and so on. The Medical Research Council, so if you want to go into biostatistics, again, they quite heavily use Stata. So, put differently, there is still a certain demand for the use of Stata, so that might be a benefit for certain employers. Now, the second point is, it is actually quite easy to use, and I'm happy to talk you through Stata, and I have lots of materials. If you want to see more about Stata, how to use it, how to actually do some nice stats quite quickly, just comment below, and I'm happy to put some more material online. Now, Stata is really good for box standard tools. If you just want to use this graphical user interface, or GUI in short, and you just want to do some standard analysis, for instance, if you just look some distributional charts or whatever, some histograms, box plots, you just click it and it works. Yeah, we haven't now, of course, opened any data set, but it's really quite easy to use. Obviously, if you want to do the same in say pandas in Python, you have to really do a little bit more work to go to that point. So easy to use, really good for all the standard things you want to do with data. Yeah, so when it comes to descriptives, plotting, visualization, quite useful, multivariate analysis. However, if you really want to develop your own tools, I think it's quite painful. It can be done. So in Stata you also have programming facilities, but I think there are quite a few drawbacks. I'm also happy to talk more about it. I can also talk about a few examples. But number one, quite often the error messages you get are not really helpful. Documentation is not amazing. Not compared to Python, and also when you work in the text editor, it's quite limited. You might then like to consider actually integrating or moving to something else like Sublime. But if you anyway move, honestly speaking, you can just leave Stata behind and just go straight into Python. The most important issue nowadays is that the community is a lot smaller. So there are far fewer people using Stata compared to R, and certainly compared to Python. So if you get stuck, the help online is very, very limited. And to be really honest, I'm honest here, when it comes to coding, 90% is Googling, I would say, 90%. 5% is coffee for normal people, in my case is a bit higher than that, and the rest is the actual coding. So you need an online community. That is for me actually quite important. Now in summary, so when you think about it, look at all the pros and cons. Is it worth it in 2022? The answer, I think, is yes, if you want to do the basics, I would say. You know, if you do some box standard analysis, it's a nice tool, it's easy to use, it gets you there very, very quickly. Without doing a lot of coding, you can actually achieve quite good levels of output. And to be honest, for professional work, so also when I worked in industry, that is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine for most applications. However, if you want to do some more fancy stuff, so if you want to develop your own tools, write your own commands in Stata, I think it's really, really not a great investment. I would stop there, so I would learn up to this point and then I would move on and use R or Python. In particular, if you want to use APIs. Yes, if you want to get data from an API, say Yahoo Finance, or there's so many APIs out there. I'm more than happy to talk about APIs and give you a few examples. You just leave a few comments down below. But if you need APIs anyway, you would need an integration, most likely with Python. So that's possible. In the latest versions of Stata, you can actually call Stata from Python. But then, of course, you have to question, why bother? Yeah, so it's not ideal then for a project to use both in a way. Yeah, I do this actually quite a lot, but it's not ideal. I think it's not really perfect. So I would say, in summary, it's good. It's good. It will do the job in 80% of cases quite well. And I think that's all it can do. Once you do some more serious work and you go into stuff like simulations, APIs, I think it's time for the big gun. It's time for Python. I hope you enjoy the joy of data analysis, and I see you in the next video. Take care.